Well,
Hey everybody. Jamie and I are getting organized. She's 9 out of 10 loud in my AirPods right now.
so I'll be screaming to her in her earpods, but it may sound normal to everybody else.
Yeah, no, I wonder. It's crazy. We'll have to see. Hey everybody, let's see who's in the house. I just put a video actually on Instagram a minute ago because we didn't really tell anybody we were going to be here. So it might be a close-knit group today. So which is good.
We've got a lot of people that are already entering and starting to ask questions. So we're good to go, I think.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Hey, Dan's reactions. What's going on, Dan? Let's see. Super Sunny D. Derek in the house. United Kingdom. Very good. Hi, Doug and Paula. What's happening? Okay, so Jamie, what's going on with you first of all? Let's check in. How's everything today? Happy Friday.
It's been a great week. Lots of things that we're doing to try to, get the websites, to their optimal mode, as the words that you like to use. So
I'm sinking in.
We're working on some really exciting things for the website. So hopefully they will be accessible here in the next few days, and I hope that you will be able to go and check them out at drtrishleigh.com.
Yeah, really cool. We're almost done. We have a new website coming, and it should be there hopefully by the end of the day, I think. So that's a lot of work, which feels good to button up, right, Jamie? So
absolutely,
yeah. So it's great. Okay, so Jamie has a list of questions from people that we're going to get to, and we'll start with that. But remember, I already see one from Mike Tate. What does PMO mean? So please put questions into the chat box because, of course, we're always happy. That's the whole point, is to, I see a question from James on sleep. So Jamie and I will both kind of, lost complete dopamine receptors like a robot. We can definitely talk about that. So please put your questions in because we will get to them as we keep going. Hey, Christopher, what's happening? Okay, so I see some good questions. So please put them in. And Jamie, let's get rolling.
All right. So the first question that I have, and these are some that's come in through the week. They knew that the live was happening. So I, do encourage anybody that has questions and they would like, to get answered. You can certainly send me those questions at info@drtrishleigh.com, and I will make sure that info at drtrishleigh.com, and we will certainly add them to the list. And if you do not want to, have your name there, just let me know what name you would like to be referred to. So that's also an option for you. So here's one for Kikdo. Is the average time frame when porn becomes addictive when the brain gets hijacked? Mm-hmm. I guess that could be different for a lot of people, but is there an average time frame?
It is different by the way, I figured out how to get the volume down. You're no longer blowing my doors off.
Good.
But it is difficult to be able to say what the time frame is. And I know everybody wants to know what's the time frame that it happens. And especially everybody wants to know what's the time frame to overcome a porn addiction. But I will answer it to a certain extent, but it also goes back to the variables. So the variables become really important. So we know one variable is how young you were when you first found porn, because younger brains are hijacked more quickly. And unfortunately, they are more intensely hijacked so that it can be more difficult to overcome because, I actually just made a video about this. So when you see it come out in these clothes, I made it right before here, is that is that if your brain only developed for 8 years, right now the average is 8 that people are finding porn. So if your brain developed in a healthy mode for 8 years, and if you're 48, if you've been using the porn brain pattern for 40 years, that is difficult to undo the neural pathways that you've basically used your entire life, and then to recreate neural pathways. Not impossible, but difficult, and definitely needs an intentional plan, like I'm always talking about. So, it usually only takes a few exposures, 1 or 2. Actually, 2 is what I talk about in the science, and we've made a infographic on it. So maybe you can make a note, Jamie, that we can put that infographic with the dopamine on my Instagram feed so that people can see it, because then what it shows basically is the first time you find porn and you're like, whoa, your brain is just on fire with this feeling and, taking you away, escaping from the chaos or the challenges in your life and pulling you into the screen and soothing your brain there. That is, the earlier that happens, then the second time you go back, basically, your brain's recalibrated and it's already increased the amount of dopamine, and it's called habituation. And then it escalates from there. So the factors are how frequently, how consistently, and then when intensity increases, especially if it increases earlier on, those are the factors. So it can take just 1 or 2 times and then your brain is hooked. But there are a lot of variables. If you have trauma in your life, that's going to be a major variable. And, if you are younger, and then if you start consuming porn. I also just made a video talking about the 2 different types, classic porn addiction versus contemporary. So for classic, for older people, or, I'm definitely classified in the older people classification, is that if you started out in a more classic way, like looking at porn magazines, and then when the internet came into play, then you got into internet porn. Yes, there's a longer amount of time that you've been exposed to porn, but usually for people like that, for older people, classic, it can take a little bit longer for that to kind of ramp up the intensity, opposed to contemporary, where younger people find, really intense genres quickly, and they start just engaging in lots of it all the time when they're younger. So, it's actually not even like, if you're older, it's worse for you. If you're younger, it's better for you. When you're younger, you have development on your side. So here's the factors. Age definitely matters, but the thing that matters the most, age isn't like, if you're older, it doesn't mean it's worse for you. Because I have people who are in their 60s who can recover fairly quickly. And I have people in their 20s who can't, because they have been consuming such intense, not that they can't recover ever, but it takes a little bit more time. So the variables really are how frequently, consistently, and intensity that you've been consuming, because the more you do that, the more your frontal lobe is deactivated and the reward center in your brain is fried out.
Great answer. I've got a sticker that David has donated $100. So thank you, David. And your question is, back in the day when I used to listen that loud, heavy music, I remember feeling a rush of something in my right side. It felt good. What was that? I'm 29 years old.
Okay, David, first of all, thank you for donating, because all donations go into founding the nonprofit, and we're already in the works of putting a prevention program in place for teenagers. And I totally appreciate you contributing to that cause, because I'm hoping to prevent lots of people from being here in the future. Although I appreciate everybody being here right now, because we're going to recover from this stuff. Okay, so back in the day, when you listen to loud music, people experience this. And so there's lots of people on here, I'm sure, that have had this experience, possibly recently. So I'm assuming that when you listen to the loud music, and you can put it in the chat if my assumption is wrong, but when you listen to loud, heavy music, it was pleasurable for you. It felt good to you. I'm going to make that assumption. If I'm wrong, let me know. Because, I love to crank up the tunes, as I always tell you. I was just on a little brain break, cranking up some new Kanye, Donda, which I got a quote for everybody here from it, because he just dropped a new album. And, I love cranking up the tunes. I do it all the time. It makes me feel great. But when you feel a rush of something in your head, typically it is the change in electrical energy in your brain. So it could literally be the downshifting of your brain from that fast, high energy to more of a calm, focused state. But along with that comes a dopamine rush, typically. So from music, if it feels good to you and you get that feeling in your brain, it can be a positive thing. It means that your brain got this hit of dopamine. If it's at, decent, healthy, decent is the wrong word, but at high, but not too high levels, that makes you feel good. If you feel it in your head, though, it's probably at very high levels. And that is exactly what people feel when they are consuming pornography, is they will feel the feeling in their brain. So in the right side of your brain, in the front, is an area that is for impulse control and judgment. And so that actually, when you get that big feeling in that rush, it can be knocking out the judgment center in your brain, taking it out of the picture, making it so that making better decisions can be hard. So I'm glad you don't listen to it any longer, because it can be that, you were really cranking your brain up in a way that was unhealthy, closer to a supernormal stimulus of like pornography is. Pornography is the highest supernormal stimulus. And there's others that are a little lower level. They're still, I don't even totally consider them to be supernormal stimuli, because they have not yet been proven to yet, but they're definitely moving in that direction, like social media, in the way that so many people use it, in terms of being on Instagram with feeds that are either explicit or close to it, or, on OnlyFans or on Twitter. When you're using social media in those ways, you're crossing that boundary from not being a supernormal stimulus to being one. And I know there's people out there that have had that feeling in their brain, just like you describe it. So if you have a feeling like that, that's not good for you. And then some people will have that feeling in a negative way, a headache there, as they recover from pornography addiction. And it's basically the opposite effect happening. So if your brain gets all this dopamine and it feels good when it consumes porn or music or anything like that, then what happens is, when you stop giving that area of the brain what it wants, it will be jonesing for it, and it'll be going to that anxiety mode, into that overwhelm mode, and it will have more cortisol running through and not getting that dopamine hit, and people will get a headache, or they'll feel like a buzzing in their head there. So that's pretty common. Yeah, Sam, you're right. Pandemic is making more people get into porn. The numbers are off the chain, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Music can disinhibit, Alan, for sure.
So another one from Mike Tate. We get this question all the time. What does PMO mean?
Yeah. And then, Mike, I see you have another question too about when you meditate, stuff, quote unquote, pops into your mind, and, in and out of focus, and can't stay in the zone because you are having intrusive thoughts. So I will answer both of them. So what happens? Okay. PMO is called porn masturbation orgasm, PMO. So that's what it stands for. And basically all three of them, right? They're a trifecta. People are after they're actually chasing the O, right? But they use porn and masturbation too. And actually the O is not in what science shows. I know I'm thinking as I talk, but what science shows is that I spoke incorrectly, because that doesn't characterize it in the way that most people use pornography, masturbation, orgasm. They think they're chasing the orgasm, but if you spend enough time consuming pornography, what happens is you actually get more dopamine up front. You'll get it from the ritual. You'll get it from the beginning of, when you start to watch porn. And that's why so many people will try to stave off orgasm and stay in porn sessions longer and longer and longer. And I've talked about edging just about every time we've come on, because it is so dangerous. I consider it to be the worst of the worst in terms of porn consumption. So if you're opening up your tabs and moving through a lot of them, and then letting your brain linger in that dopamine flood, you are in effect frying out those D2 dopamine receptors and damaging your brain by sitting in that space. So when we go over to Mike's second question is, like, when I try to meditate, these thoughts keep popping in. So first of all, meditation is a practice. And I'm sure, you've heard that cliche, is that you can't do it wrong. You can improve in your ability to calm your brain down and make it more focused. But at the beginning, those thoughts are going to pop in. Now, especially, I've said this to a few people this week, so this is a really good thing to focus on, is that especially when you are gaining some success consciously. So if when you're in your world and you're at work, you're able to keep porn thoughts away, and when you're with your family and you're out hopefully doing your hobbies and you're spending time with your friends, it's not popping into your brain as much now when you're out and in the world, or even if you're at home alone, it doesn't pop into your mind as much. But then what happens is when you try to meditate, you're actually getting more into an unconscious or subconscious state. And when you go into those more subconscious states, your brain is calmer and it's slowed down, which means you're not doing as much thinking. You're not using that high, fast speed. Then the thoughts will try to pop in. So this is next level stuff. So if you're experiencing that, watch the thoughts for a second. Don't grab them. What I do in my meditations is I think of all my thoughts as being on a ticker, like a ticker tape, like on, my dad used to watch it all the time, that in, it's not CNN. I forget what it is that has like all the stocks and everything. And it has a ticker, the channel that on TV that my dad would watch, and has the ticker of all the stocks that would go by on the bottom. I think of my thoughts like that. They're on a ticker and they're going by, and I see them and I let them go. I don't grab them. And if you notice that you've grabbed a thought, trying to throw that thought back into the ticker. And what you're trying to do in meditation is empty out your brain and your mind. You're going for emptiness. And one technique that I teach people is to do, it's called in the gap training. And actually, I was thinking about this when I was listening to Kanye, because in the opening of his new album, Donda, there's a 52-second Donda chant, which a chant is a really good way to be able to listen to something, but not grab onto it, because it's a woman who's just saying Donda over and over and over. So it creates some space for your brain to not have thoughts because you're focused on something. So you could use that. And then in the gaps are where there should be emptiness. You can do it with your favorite affirmation. If you pray, you can do it with a prayer. And all you do is say it in your head, but then keep spaces and pauses. I was helping my son with his English project, and deliberate pausing is apparently called a cesura. So like a long pause, giving yourself cesuras there in the flow of your thoughts, that's the gap, and feeling the emptiness, and then creating more and more of that while you are trying to meditate. But don't grab those thoughts, because if you grab a porn thought while you're meditating, or you're just chilling, or you're listening to Kanye, it will activate dopamine, and you'll start dripping dopamine in your system. And it will be like, to lower levels, that you are watching porn, and it's going to fire up those old porn neural pathways. So don't grab the thought.
So, hello from Germany. This is DJ Simon. Will the urges disappear as time passes?
Yes, but we talked about this 2 weeks ago now. We talked about this, but so I won't talk about it for a real long time. If you want, the recording from 2 weeks ago is on YouTube, where I talk about this at length. And I actually made a video on this too, so you can go check it out in a couple different places. But the idea is that it's not just time. It is other stuff that you put into your brain. Memory doesn't work on time. It works on quantity. So you have to put new things into your brain. And again, if you think about it logically, if you've been watching porn, even if it was the last 5 years, which for most people, it's been a lot longer than that. If you've been watching porn consistently for 5 years, that's what your brain is thinking, because that's the thing it's been thinking about a lot for 5 years. So yes, it takes time to unwire that brain pattern that thinks about it. But if your brain starts thinking about something new and healthy, especially something to decrease anxiety. So you always hear me say, go do the hobby that you love. If you like to play pool, go play pool. If you like to shoot darts, go shoot some darts. If you like to work out, crank out some workouts. If you like to, skateboard, go longboarding. Like, do the thing that you like, and then investigate some new levels of that. Start thinking about that thing, and it will help put new stuff into your brain. Okay.
So here's another one. Christopher Strickland, what did you say the difference between a slip up and a relapse?
Yeah, great question, Christopher. And I see Doug asking where you donate. Honestly, I have no idea, because Jamie set that up for us, which is a beautiful thing. And it, like I said, the donations go into the nonprofit, but I'll answer this question, Jamie, and then maybe you can let people know if they're interested in donating where they can do that. Okay. The difference between a slip up and a relapse. This is very important, because if you have a slip up, it means that you've slipped. It's like you're on a journey and then you hit a water patch and you go down for a second. You've had a slip up. So after a slip up, you get yourself up, you dust yourself off, you go, that really stinks that I just slipped and fell. But it's just one time. I am going to learn from it. I'm not going to step in puddles anymore. I'm going to step over them, and then you keep going. A relapse basically is, you don't just watch porn or masturbate one time. Now the analogy is you're on this pathway and you see a giant hill, and you're like, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to slide down this hill, like in the rain, like a mud. And now you're like, woo, you're just down this hill and you're toast. You're gone off into the woods, sliding down this hill. That's a relapse. So a relapse is not only did you watch porn or masturbate or act out sexually one time, you allowed that one time to become a pattern, likely the old pattern that you had going in your life. So slips are incredibly powerful to help you avoid relapses. And, when people say they've relapsed, I don't break it down, slip versus relapse. But the concept is important, because if you make a mistake, then that's a mistake that you correct. Even if you have a relapse, it's still a mistake that you correct. Like, in this journey, there's no perfect way that this thing is going to flow. The essence of it is you become the master of your own ship and learning how to navigate it while you're in this phase of recovery. So you learn what makes you slip up. So when I tell people to deconstruct a slip up so that they don't end up going down the hill, is what led you there. And it's always something, usually it's social media, and it's always something to the effect like, my friend on Instagram always posts explicit pictures. Then unfollow her, because it's not worth it in terms of what it's doing to your brain. Or, I watch YouTube, inevitably it makes it so that I watch porn. Then no more watching YouTube. That's why I call it the slippery slope. So a slip is a one-time occurrence. And yeah, you can have a slip up, every 3 months for a little while. I don't want you to, but a lot of people do. If you continue to learn from them, they're incredibly powerful. They keep moving you forward. If every single time you learn something new, and many people do, they're like, I made a mistake, but guess what? I really learned a lot from that. It can really be, a blessing in disguise. And a full-blown relapse is you're just back into the pattern like it was before. And, you really get out of sync of what's going on in terms of your recovery.
So I have, I know how to do the stickers on the regular YouTube. This is a little different, but it says that you can add a sticker on the left side. And if anybody has, just a brief summary of how you add those stickers, I would be grateful if you could elaborate, because I will definitely have this information the next time we do a live. But I have a question from William of Orange Did Nothing. If I learned an instrument, piano, violin, will it optimize the prefrontal cortex? And if so, how does one optimize the cortex exactly? Better yet, what do you do
Yeah, great. What would I do? But I always
Yeah.
tell people, I try not to tell people you should, but I would say if I were you, this is what I would do. And the answer is yes. You definitely can optimize your prefrontal cortex by doing something that you love. So if you don't want to play an instrument like piano or violin, then stay away from it. But if you're interested, because what happens is when you use your brain to do something that you actually are excited about and that you love, then you hit that flow state. And in flow state, what happens is even if it's challenging for you to learn, you're still engaged in it. And what you'll do is you'll engage those middle speeds in terms of electrical energy. So the speeds in the middle are called low beta. Another name for the very similar speed is SMR, sensory motor rhythm. Alpha is a little bit slower. So alpha is the speed for calm. Low beta is the speed for focus. SMR is basically right in the middle, and it has a little bit different wave formation. But those speeds are around, we'll just say 8 to 12 for sake of ease, 8 to 12 hertz. And when you hit that, 8 to 12 hertz is, and actually when I would do presentations back when the world was spinning, I would make people use their, bodies to demonstrate the hertz so that you can get the concept of it. But 8 to 12 hertz is in the middle. It's going perfectly fast. When your brain is using very fast speed, it's going cranking fast, 30, 35, 40 hertz, even faster if you have real bad anxious anxiety feelings. And it's going slower if you're feeling like you're dragging or you're overwhelmed or unmotivated. Your brain's going 2 hertz, 3 hertz. So when you get your brain into 10 hertz, we'll say, you're in the rhythm of activating your prefrontal cortex in the perfect way, which then creates the cascade of neurotransmitters in a very healthy way of all the neurochemical cocktail. So the more you put your brain in the zone, it's easy just to think about it as the zone. The more you put your brain in the zone, the more it stays in the zone. And that is how you recover. And that's a huge piece of the 90-day program that I offer people. That's why I always say in the videos too, get on purpose. Because literally, if you go to work that you love, like I love my work. When I don't ever want to stop working, I have to pull myself away because it makes my brain feel so good. And I just love doing it. I'm like in the zone. I'm using that 10 hertz every time I do it. I'm not stressed out about it, mostly, right? I'm not stressed out about it, and I'm not like dragging and don't want to do it. So when I go to work for 8 hours a day, my brain's in the zone. I'm using that optimal. And then I go hang out with my family and my friends and my hubs, and I enjoy them all. None of them stress me out, and most of the time. So then when I go to hang out, I'm also using 10 hertz. And then I go paddleboarding on the lake, and I'm actually using more like 8 hertz to get my brain calm. So if you can find flow state through your whole day, your brain uses perfect speed all day long. So then if you're using perfect speed basically all day long, and then a stressor happens, and I've had a couple stressors, none of them are ever big things. I don't know what happened lately, because I almost yelled at someone. These kids, man, just yanking my chain all the time. They're yanking my chain. You know what they do? They argue about nothing. And that's what I said to 2 of them today. I'm like, remember Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday when I said, let's not argue about nothing at 6 a.m. they all dispersed. But when they start arguing about nothing, I wish I could remember what it was, because it was ridiculous, whatever they were talking about this morning. And that spikes me. So now my 10 hertz when I'm rocking out in the kitchen today. Actually, this week we've put all different music on across the week, which is really fun. My husband picked Van Morrison because he's 53. I had Sting on this morning, so it's always chill music in the morning. But and then they spike up my anxiety with the ridiculousness. But then it comes down, and the thing is, because I'm mostly at 10 hertz. When someone starts being ridiculous, I don't freak out and yell because I am at 10. So this is the beauty. This is important. Then we can move on to another question. But when you're at 10 hertz most of the time, and a major stressor can come your way, but now your brain's baseline is at 10 and it goes to like 15 or 20. So of course I feel anxiety. I feel that spike. But if you go to a job that you hate and it stresses you out, and then your partner just stresses you out, and then you have no hobbies that you do to take the edge off, your brain's at like 40 hertz all the time. And now your teenagers are talking about something ridiculous, and you go from 40 to 50 and you freak out on them because you went from 40 to 50. I went from 10 to 15. Total difference maker in your entire life. That is why I say get on purpose in your work. I know people think they can't do it. I know change is hard. I know making the decision to make the change is hard. But when you do make that decision and you feel really good on the inside, that's why I talk about creating a life of dignity and integrity. When you're on purpose and you're everything, you're just in the zone of dignity and integrity, then you don't need anything. So going back to William's question is, if you have been wanting to play piano or violin, then yes, it's going to optimize your brain. But if you want to learn how to do something else, and if you have a thought for yourself, throw it in the chat box if you're willing to share, because what fires people up and jazzes people up is totally different for each and every person. And I always use the examples from my own world, and me and my kids, we all do different things. My daughter, who's 16, she's so cool. She does makeup looks for like 3 hours. She does the coolest makeup looks. It's amazing. And she wants to go to school to be a makeup artist but she does these makeup looks and she comes out after 3 hours. If I had to do makeup for 3 hours, I'd want to strangle somebody. Like literally it put me over the edge, but it puts her in the zone and she comes out. I'm like, that's really cool. And then I always talk about Seamus plays basketball. He destroyed me in 1v1 the other day, 12-0. It was pitiful.
Wow.
I'm going to do better next time. Okay, so I saw a question that I wanted to answer. So I was going to jump in and answer these two questions really quickly. Okay. Is that how important for recovery is it to uncover the root cause of the addiction? And that's by Aubrey Bradshaw. And I wanted to answer that because, and it says, how common is it that the addiction is solely from exposure, not necessarily from trauma or dysfunction? Great question, which is why I wanted to answer it. It can be important for some people if it needs to be resolved. But here's an example that someone I work with likely was sexually abused as a child. And so we used a bunch of neuromodulation techniques, brain training, and, was able to bring him to the understanding that there definitely was something there. But he did all the work surrounding it and was able to release that from his nervous system. So we didn't have to keep going to figure out who or what, because he didn't remember those details. So for some people, it's important to go back and remember those details. For most people, it's important to understand the parameters at play and really to be able to get to forgiveness And the reality is everybody has family dysfunction. I've talked about that before. It's just what flavor and the magnitude of it. So I think we all could benefit from looking into what traumas or dysfunction might be there. And I don't know if I shared this, but lately or last time we talked, but my sister said to me, "Oh, we're so lucky because there's no trauma in our family." And I just gave her this blanket just because you don't recognize it as, and it's not like it's bad. I grew up in a wonderful, family, literally looks like the Brady Bunch, but underneath it are generationally passed down patterns that are in fact dysfunctional. And so when I uncovered them, it frees my nervous system. So I didn't have to do all this massive, putting myself in tons of painful situations, but I still have these epiphanies all the time now. The most important thing is to create a brain pattern and then a mindset that's able to keep exploring the way that you live your life and the patterns that you use, which brings me to the Kanye quote. The Kanye quote, he says in the second song on that album, is that I can't be controlled with programs and presets. Reset. And that's what I'm talking about here, is that we do live, our programming isn't from us. Our programming is from our family of origin. So, and every last person could benefit from healthier programming. So it doesn't even have to be earth shattering, but when you figure out the patterns that don't work for you and you become more individualistic in what does work for you, and especially when you learn the healthy ways to live opposed to unhealthy, that is important. And so when there's addiction in the mix, something caused addiction. So it could either be trauma or it is family patterns, because even in my family, we're Irish Catholic, right? What's the way that Irish Catholic people chill? They drink, and they drink a lot. And so like, if I just look at that and go, you know what, everybody drinks a lot, then that's me going, okay, drinking a lot's fine. But like recognizing that, you go, okay, Irish Catholic, and not everybody, if you're Irish Catholic, don't be mad at me, but you know, it just recognizing like, that's just a way that, and in my family, one of the patterns is kind of working yourself to the bone and never allowing yourself to have any fun. And I grew up that way, learning that all I should do is work, work, work. And that if I was having any fun, I was doing it wrong. And, you know, I had to teach myself, if I don't chill out and do some of my hobbies, I'm literally going to burn my brain out, because of the reason I just told you in William's question. So like, there is something going on in there that is dysfunctional, because if you have an addiction, it's a dysfunctional way of living. So there's ways that you can get to better functioning. And that's what recovery is. Recovery is literally recovering yourself. Going back to figure out who you really are. If your family didn't put their thumbprint on you, you know, who do you want to be? And that's why I say, figure it out, figure out who you want to be, and then gain the courage over your journey to be able to express that. Hey, Jamie, I'm sorry, but I'm going to answer one more question, but I wanted to tell David, thank you for this comment. And thank you for the nice compliment of, you know, enjoying the channel and finding it useful. Is that the nonprofit is hopefully, fingers crossed, going to be set up within like the next 2 months. And we will be using something called Donor Box. So the whole world will be assured that it is in fact a nonprofit organization. And the name of the company, in fact, is Brain Reboot, and it does not have the P word in it. So I am very cognizant of that. Right now, any receipt you have would come from Leigh Holdings, because that's the name of my Dr. Trish Leigh company. And that money, I'm taking that money and putting it into the nonprofit organization. So David, you and I think alike. Great minds think alike. And I have exactly that. And then as soon as all of our paperwork is back, I hired a nonprofit attorney to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. It'll be Donor Box, and that will be really cool. Okay, Jamie, I don't mean to keep.
All right. We've got one from Danny Man. And this also is a question from someone else, so we can kind of tackle them both. But any other brain activities besides watching pornography so that I can avoid them? You know, brain boosting activities and brain draining activities. So, you know, what's the difference, and how can they avoid them?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. So I talk about 3 types of brain activities: brain boosting, brain neutral, and brain draining. And so many brain neutral activities can shift into brain draining if you do them too much. So clearly watching pornography is brain draining because it literally damages your brain. But and I've already kind of said that if you're using social media in an unhealthy way to get any dopamine hits in terms of anything explicit, that's definitely brain draining because of what's in your feed. So you should definitely avoid that. And if you want to stay on social media, unfollow everybody and start filling your feed with motivation. My feed's filled with motivation. So whenever I go on for work and I'm going to put something on there, I don't, you know, drain my brain. I get a little hit. Mine's brain boosting. I'm like, oh yeah, that's super motivating. Makes me want to go out and run 20 miles because I'm jazzed up by a thing that just motivated me, or work all night long. So what other things are brain draining? TV, if it's used too much. So this is an example of something that can be brain neutral. So what I was going to say about brain neutral is, like, if you go for a walk, that's definitely brain neutral. It can be brain boosting, but when you're just like shifting your brain into neutral, if you think of it that way, brain neutral activities. So like when I cranked up the tunes because I had to unload and load the dishwasher because Seamus left for school this morning without doing it. I always crank up the tunes. It's totally thoughtless. And I deliberately do things like that in the middle of my work because I had already worked for 3 hours. Don't get me wrong. I would have rather done something else besides the dishwasher, but had to be done. So when I'm doing that, my brain just shifts into neutral. Cooking's kind of like that for me. When I cook something I've cooked, or if I just chop veggies, literally no thought put into it. I just chop veggies. All that energy comes down in my brain, and then I can go back to work with a refresh. So things like that, where you're in neutral, if you're hanging out with friends, of course, it's brain boosting. But if you're just hanging out on your back porch, that can be brain neutral. But anything electronically driven like YouTube or TV or video games, that is brain neutral if you do it for a half hour after a long day. But if you do it for 3 hours, you tip into brain draining. Electronics drain your brain. They resonate at 60 hertz. So going back to our 10 hertz that I talked about in optimal flow functioning, if you're in front of a screen, your brain will attune to the screen. It jacks your brain up with fast energy, which then tires your brain out and fatigues it. Very brain draining being in front of a screen for any amount of time. And you can get blue light filter glasses to help that out a little bit. But, so anything like that is going to be brain draining. Relationships can be brain draining. And of course, I don't want anybody to, ditch a relationship that can be healed and made healthy. But the reason I say to get on purpose in your relationships is because so many people's dynamics are totally off. And we don't ever learn positive dynamics. We learn the dynamics of our parents. So when I work with people, when they do remote neurofeedback with me and we're in coaching, we're working together privately, one of the questions is, what was your parents' relationship like? What are 3 words that you would use to describe your parents? So I encourage you now as an action step, because these are actually coaching calls too, is to think about the people in your life and think about the dynamics of their relationships or the way that they deal with the world. And so there's healthy relationships and healthy dynamics and healthy ways of coping with the world and unhealthy ones. Any hitting, any yelling, any, freaking out about anything, any constant micromanaging, any control talk, I was talking to, we are also creating a partners program, which I'm very excited about. And I was talking to Adria Sullivan, who's my partner in crime in that pursuit, which will be out in a month. We're having a website made and she's going to be working with partners. She's a psychotherapist, very skilled. We'll have a digital program. But I was talking to her about, having GPS. Life 360 is what my family was using for a little while. Using Life 360 to see where everybody in the family is or see where your partner is. And I know so many people, I'm probably going to make a couple people mad right now, but that's my job, right? Challenge thought systems. So we had that for a little while. It literally almost put my oldest daughter over the edge. And then I thought it was creepy that I could see where my husband was going all the time. I literally don't even want to know, right? Like, I want to know where that man went. And then, right, I'd just rather see him when he gets home. And then also too, he texts me like, what are you doing wherever I was? And I'm like, how do you even know I'm there? And so I quickly got rid of Life 360 for our entire family. I make my kids put on location services if they're going to be somewhere overnight, just so I know they're safe and alive. But, it's not good to control each other. So that's a brain draining activity. If the people in your world don't feed your soul, and I know that sounds cheesy, but it's totally true. If you don't look forward to hanging out with them, then you can change that. So you do look forward to hanging out with them. And like with my kids, that's what I'm always joking about with my kids. I have literally an amazing time with my kids. They are hysterical and we have a fun time. Of course, I parent them in the middle of it. And then in the tough times, I have to go into parent mode. But like I was joking, I recorded a podcast with Austin Burns this week. He's really sweet. It was a really good podcast. And I'll have to give you the reading recommendation I got out of it in a second. But I was talking about how my little daughter, who's 11, she goes, it's really cool how, you don't let us swear, but if we do swear, you don't care. And we came up with the term, we came up with the term non-sanctioned swearing, because they all keep going, what the hell, bro? That's like the new thing they're doing. We just do it throughout the whole house, like just being weird. And she's been doing it too much, honestly, because she's almost 11. But, the idea is like, they're all in the kitchen doing it, having a blast. I don't walk in and go, stop swearing, and sometimes they swear other swear words. But, the idea is like, I love hanging out with them. They actually enjoy hanging out with me. They will ask me to hang out. How cool is that, right? Hence the 1v1. Actually, I made all the kids play basketball on Sunday and we had a really good time. Okay, so those are relationships can be brain draining, work can be brain draining, and not putting in enough brain boosting activities in your life is brain draining. So the days that you work really long, what do you feel like you want to do at the end of the night? You want to watch porn, you want 4 cocktails, because if you just jammed your brain up all day long, you're in hyperarousal mode. You need something to bring it down. But if you go play a little basketball with your peeps before you come home, your brain comes down when you're doing the things that you love. So it's definitely and you can feel brain draining activities, things you don't like doing, or the things you feel like you need to do to offset the busyness of your life. Those are draining your brain. If you feel like you have to calm down, alcohol's brain draining, of course, in moderation, if you don't have a problem with it. That's not what I'm talking about. Eating too much food can be brain draining. Really just too much of something can be brain draining, but electronics is the main one we have to. Yes, I have seen Limitless, SM Hassan. That is one of the best movies. And you know what I have said for the longest time is that the NZT is neurofeedback. So if you know anything about neurofeedback brain training and you watch Limitless, the movie, you know how at the end he doesn't need it anymore and he's in the zone? That's what neurofeedback brain training does. And so I love that movie. It's great.
So another question from Hassan is, objectifying other person is also a relapse?
Well, it depends if that's the behavior that you're trying to stay away from and get rid of, but it's definitely not helping the recovery journey. And typically that is something that really needs to be worked on by people. Like I talked to another person that I'm coaching and he's like, it's really hard at the gym because gyms are so good for you, except for they're filled with women who are wearing yoga pants. So it's just triggering and then objectifying people. If you're still seeing people as objects for your dopamine hits, your pleasure, then that's using the wrong neural pathways. And so taking a strategy in that very moment is to shift your brain into a mode where you see that person as a whole person, make eye contact, windows of the soul, right? So being able to make eye contact with that person can bring you out of objectification. But when you work on yourself and it's complex, all these things are complex, is that, a lot of times you're going to those dopamine hits because of all the stuff that I just talked about, that your life is too brain draining in the first place and your brain needs those dopamine hits. And then of course, yes, you've conditioned it to do it. So part of it is unconditioning and then building a lifestyle, a life situation. Your life is just a situation. And I think we all lose sight of this. Whatever life situation you have going on, you are creating. And of course there's variables, but you have the power to create anything that you want for yourself. So using that power to create a life situation that feeds you is the most important thing to do.
So here's another question. And this is something that I've kind of wondered myself because I've heard you talk about this a lot and I am not familiar with what is the story about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Yeah, and I always forget which one's who. There's tons of movies on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the most recent one I think is called Jekyll, isn't it? There's a couple of recent versions of this, and I always forget, but I will try. Is that Dr. Jekyll, and it's actually I think it's spelled Jeckyll. And Mr. Hyde is Hyde. Actually, I think the new movie is called Mr. Hyde, or the newish movie. But the story is Dr. Jekyll turns into Mr. Hyde, which is like an alter ego. Dr. Jekyll is I think he's the good one. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a book by Robert Stevenson. And so basically it's the alter ego. So the reason I use Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is because one is the version that's all dopamine, all filled with dopamine. This is very classic. And the way that I use it is when you have just watched porn, or if you're prepping to watch porn and your brain's getting that dopamine flowing, then you're in a good mood. And then if you're on the backside of that, or if you're triggered, you're in a bad mood. And so that is the idea of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and that you have two versions of yourself. And for many people in a porn cycle, there are two. There's the irritable, angry one that needs a dopamine hit. And then there's the one that had the dopamine hit. And it's pretty wild if you look into yourself and you look into the cycle and you see how that's playing out for yourself. And then what I want you to know is your friends see that. Your partner totally sees that. Your children see that. So they might not know what's at the bottom of it, but they definitely know that you swing between two versions of yourself. One that is angry and irritable, and one that is pleasant and happy and up. So those are the extremes that I talk about in the pendulum effect. The pendulum effect when you consume pornography is your brain goes into that very fast high mode, or it goes into that very low mode. And the way out is to get to 10 hertz in the middle and stay there. If you stay at 10 hertz in the middle, there's no more high highs, unfortunately, and there's no more low lows, thankfully. So now that's the joy. That's why I talk about it as joy instead of like this intensity of pleasure. There's still pleasure in the middle at 10 hertz. It's just that you're not getting this extreme supernormal stimulus level of pleasure that is destroying your brain. Okay, do you have another question for me here?
I do. This one's not on the list, but this is from Danny. I'm 19 days without porn and masturbation. I am single. My question is, I'm concerned about premature ejaculation because with 17 years of porn addiction, I've used masturbation in an unhealthy way, so I had premature ejaculation with women. I am not completely confident to have a woman in my life because of this fear. So with time, with no flap, will this recover? Do you have to add some masturbation exercises to learn how to do this to avoid?
Yeah, so like the gist of that is that the longer that you abstain, your brain's going to rewire itself. So as your brain rewires itself, that's why I'm also trying to teach people how to establish healthy sexuality, which I totally understand can be difficult when you've lived a life of unhealthy sexuality, like we've talked about from around the age of 8. But premature ejaculation might happen. For many people, it's delayed ejaculation for a while, but premature ejaculation is like now, if you haven't watched porn and masturbated, your brain is very excited to be aroused. And so then that's where premature ejaculation happens. So one way is, especially if it's giving you anxiety, one way around that is to give yourself a sex washout, literally a washout period where and Napoleon Hill, which is going to be the book recommendation that Austin and I talked about. Napoleon Hill talks about sexual transmutation. I made a video on it once, that using all of your energy, and honestly, this is what semen retention is about too, using all of your energy and having it build up in your system, but then putting it into your work, building intimacy, which intimacy is connection with other people. It doesn't have to be, it's not sexual necessarily. And then getting on purpose in your hobbies, focusing all your energy in those directions. So if you have a girl that you're interested in, or if you have a partner, that's why if you have a partner and you tell your partner you're working on this stuff, you two can work on this together, and then you can take a little sex break. And what a sex break is going to do is, first of all, it's probably going to make your brain more excited in the short run, but then you'll hit a tipping point. Typically, when people do a sex washout for 90 days, which is a really long time, if people really just sexualize everything, a sex washout can be powerful because they go from sexualizing to be desexualizing everything, trying to look at the world with new, fresh eyes that don't involve anything sexual. And it takes time to be able to do that. But then after that, so a washout could be a good idea for you, and just focusing your energy on getting on purpose in those other directions. At the same time, then maybe after the 90 days for you is developing healthy sexuality and being able to look at being with your partner more as a spiritual experience than a pleasure get, an experience just for your pleasure, looking at it as an experience that you have together with your partner, approaching it differently, not necessarily from the pleasure standpoint, but from the joy standpoint, teaching your brain to work in a different way, basically. So that is, and I know it takes time, but don't sit around waiting for time to help you. You're waiting for your brain to unwire. If you do that, do things, do as many things to get on purpose in those directions. I know you might not be able to see it right now, but when you do that, your brain is reactivating the frontal lobe, healing the reward center in your brain, because now you're getting rewards from your work, your relationships, and your hobbies. It is going to reactivate your brain so that you don't have premature ejaculation, you don't have delayed ejaculation. Then when you practice healthy sex, you are practicing having the perfect amounts of arousal. And before I forget, Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich. And what Austin and I talked about, I didn't even know he had this other book. The Napoleon Hill Foundation put out this book called Outwitting the Devil, which I just downloaded, and I started reading it last night. Honestly, I'm only in the foreword, but Napoleon Hill is a literal genius, so I'm sure I'm going to love this book too. So if you want to check out a book, that's what I'll be reading this weekend. You can read it with me. Okay, Jamie, I have a 1 o'clock. So one or two more here.
Real quick, ammo. I have reached 90-day stretch of no PMO, no flap, and semen retention. I have a question. So I've been an avid porn addict pretty much 15 years. I feel better now that I've not been looking at that toxic, or releasing my DNA. How long till my mind rewires itself from all the damage that has been done?
That's the golden egg question. How long? I unfortunately don't have the answer to that, but I'm going to tell you that the more things you do to rewire your brain in the right direction, the faster the time frame is. That goes for everybody here. So if you make a plan, like the 90-day program that we offer. And by the way, that's the nonprofit that we've established. So when you purchase that program, that purchase is a donation. We're able to, quote unquote, sell digital products that are actually donations. All the money goes into the nonprofit, just so you know. But the 90-day program is a plan. So if you don't want to use that plan, create your own plan based upon what I talk about in these videos. So the plan has to be delving into your past and picking apart the pieces that might be impacting your current behavior. Going back to Aubrey's question, we all have stuff from our past that's informing our behavior. And if you have behaviors you don't like, something is pushing you in that direction. Then of course, just like Aubrey's question is, you also have routines and habits around porn consumption. You have to change your physical environment, your mental environment. You have to make as many changes in your world. The people who succeed, so just real quick, because then I have to jump off, is that people go into inpatient rehab. They'll be there for 21 days and they're all clean. And then when they come back out, if they go back into their life that they left, more times than not, they go back to the behavior that they had, whether it be pornography addiction, sex addiction, drinking, drugs. The point is, you have to change your environment. So change as much in your environment, your mental environment, your physical environment, make new things happen, start new hobbies, get new friends, evaluate your relationship, improve it, or think about moving on to a better one. Not that I want anybody leaving their relationships, but spend time in doing that. Change something that will make it faster. The more changes, and add brain training. On my website, there's Brain Training 101. It's only $49. You do have to purchase the headband from the manufacturer. It's $212. So for under $300, you could be rewiring your brain without having to do anything. It does it for you. You have to use it, but it does it. Oh, Brent, I'm sorry. You need a new job, my friend. I know, tough decisions, right? I'm just going to look through and see what we got here. How long until you can handle stressors better? You can start right away, but your brain's probably going to be triggered. That's Jack. ASMR videos. SM Hassan, just stay away, my friend. We will be talking about them in a different, but it boils my blood. It's one of the things that boils my blood. So we have to wait till it doesn't. Like I told Jamie yesterday, I try to always stay in 10 hertz. And right now, those videos really irritate me because they're just trying to rope people in. At least porn, you know what you're getting, right? Okay, so I think we're going to have to wrap up because I'm being late for my 1 o'clock. But, okay, so we do have, and Perry, if I'm saying that right, Lincoln asked how to get the $19.99, the $20 program for September. Jamie can put the link in this. Oh, thank you, Bartholomew, and thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. I really do. So how do you get the $20 program? We're selling the $19.99 program. It is a introductory program laying out it basically lays out what's in the 90-day program, just in a simplified format, much shorter and easier to consume to get you started. And you can start with that $19.99 program and get the gist of a plan. That could be a really great way to make your plan by yourself if that's what you want to do. So Jamie's going to find a way to, hopefully, did we find a way to get that somewhere easy peasy on the top of the YouTube channel? And she'll put a link on this recording. And there is a video on my channel talking about it, which has the link in it.
I just put the link in the comments, but I will certainly, if you search.
Hey, Jamie, do you mind? I'm going to jump off, everybody. Jamie can wrap up because I'm already 2 minutes late for my 1 o'clock meeting. But thank you for being here. Stay the course this weekend. I'm so glad that you're here. I know that this weekend you can start making the plan. Go do something fun. Long weekend. I keep forgetting it's a long weekend. I'm totally psyched to be able to do some fun things myself. So go spend time with people who make you feel good. Get out. Make a plan right now. If you have no plans, which actually I have no plans and I'm glad to have none. But if you have no plans and you want them, make a plan because that will help you out. And I will see everybody next week. We'll be back. Okay. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Dr. Leigh.
I don't know how to leave. Okay. I'm leaving the studio. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye. So anybody that is interested in the $19.99 program for September only, you can access that. I've just put the link in the chat, but if you go to Dr. Trish Leigh's website and click on Porn Brain Reboot, there is a workshops page, and at the bottom of that workshops page is where you can access that. It is called Quit Porn, Heal Your Brain, and Have Great Sex. This is a intro to Dr. Leigh's 90-day program, but it is a great start. If you are not able to get into her other programs, this is an absolutely wonderful start to give you the basics that you need to be able to do and have a successful reboot. So if you have any other questions and you'd like to reach out to me, you can certainly send me an email personally at Jamie, Jamie, at drtrishleigh.com. And I will be glad to help in any way possible. If there are questions that you would like to be added to the next live on next Friday at noon, send me those questions. I will add them to my list. And we really do try to get as many questions answered as possible. Obviously, there are lots of them. But, Dr. Leigh definitely wants to give a good answer so everybody is able to really, benefit from these lives and understand how hard this addiction is. And she does have the tools that can certainly help you succeed, and it's many different shapes and sizes, but there's one out for everyone. So I will put my email address in this link. So Jamie at drtrishleigh.com. Email me questions. I will be glad to help. We are here to support and give you, as much encouragement, motivation to help you on this journey, because it is absolutely one of the hardest things that you will ever have to do in your entire life. But we are here to help. I hope you have a wonderful long weekend. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.